Hello, grade 11s. This is the screencast for the Russian Civil War and Bolshevik foreign policy. Let's get started. So the Russian Civil War, we're going to see two sides in it. We're going to see the whites, here represented by the white knight, banishing the red Bolshevik dragon, versus the new, more modern forces of the Bolsheviks. And you can see here that that red wedge defeats the other whites. So again, much more modern and much more cutting edge in some ways. Now, let's move forward and take a look at what's going on in this Civil War. And here we can see the numbers. You can see there's a lot of different participants, huge number of Bolsheviks in the Red Army. There's the White Movement, all different types of groups there. You'll even see there's a Green Army, which we'll talk about later. We've got different nationalities involved with the United Kingdom. Even Canada's in there. So it's a huge war in Russia and a huge international war. In terms of losses, we can see here losses in strengths. You can see the Russians are going to lose over 1.5 million, the whites over 1.5 million. The Allies are going to lose soldiers, not as many. And then you can also see the size of the mobilization here. We've got armies of 5 and 3 million people. And then the final number, this is also coming from Wikipedia, is we're looking at 7 to 12 million total casualties, including civilians and non-combatants. It's a horrible, horrible experience for people in Russia. It's both an ideological war, but it's also just a war for survival as a famine hits towards the end of the war. Now let's keep going and try and figure out who the different sides are. So, are these the reds or the whites that I'm describing with characteristics? They are a group that has the support of international allies, the UK, Japan, France, the United States. Is that the red or the whites? Then they surround the enemy and they cut them off from international trade. Is that the reds or the whites again? Remember, the reds are Lenin. They have experienced officers. This group also has a coalition that includes Tsarists, Mensheviks, social revolutionaries, nationalists, liberals, and the military. And I think you've guessed it now that this is probably the whites. But let's take a look and compare it to this group over here. So this group, are they the reds or the whites? They have a strong ideology. They have supporters that include nationalists, workers, and peasants. They have strong and charismatic leaders, Lenin, Trotsky, Stalin, and others. And I think you figured out now, this is the reds. And they have war communism. And they have excellent discipline. And they have a centralized position, and they control their major railway networks and the production areas. So, in the Russian Civil War, we're going to see that the whites have the support of the international allies. They surround the enemy. And they have experienced officers, and they also have a coalition, which is both good and bad, all these different characteristics. So here we can see how these things match up. Sadly, that international support ends when World War II is over, when World War I rather is over. The problem that they're surrounding the enemy like this is that it's very hard for the northern forces and the forces on the two sides to cooperate, and with the southern forces coming up. So it's very hard for them to coordinate. In addition, they have experienced officers and soldiers, and even the Czech Legion for a while. So they really do have an advantage in that area early in the war. And then finally, that coalition is made up of, has different goals, and so it's very difficult to rally behind it. Some people, those Tsarists, even wanted to return to Tsarism and the loss of peasant lands. So it doesn't really help recruit peasants. Now, when we look at the whites, we'll do the same, the reds rather, we'll do the same thing. I'll pull this over here. And what we want to see here is that they've got that ideology, which is Bolshevism, to rally behind. They have a clear message. They have a way to deal with disloyalty. They've got a very broad base of support, some of it voluntary and other parts coerced. Remember, the Red Terror is going to be going on at this time. They have strong leaders to rally behind, and these strong leaders also inspire people. The war communism that they're going to use, that you've probably read about by now, is going to get them the necessary resources to fight this war. They've got excellent, excellent discipline through party ideology and also through fear and coercion. So the Trekka will kill people that are disloyal. In addition, we've got a central position. That means moving soldiers and materials is easier, as is coordinated attacks, and they also have access to more war materials because of that. So now we'll see how each one matches up. So, strong ideology. Supporters include nationalists, workers, and peasants, and nationalists because international groups are attacking their cause. They've got that strong charismatic leaders, in particular Lenin and Trotsky. They've got the war communism. So here we're summing up why the Reds are going to win. They've got excellent discipline. And finally, that centralized position. Now, what about the Greens? Those are the peasants who at one point are their own armies and just want to be left alone. By the end, they will either be crushed by the Reds or will have joined the Reds simply because the Tsarists and the other whites aren't always as helpful as they could be or as supportive as the Greens as they'd like.